Today I will be taking a look at the GamaKay Acrylic K61 Pro that was sent over by Banggood. The box is pretty plain, but I think this is a pretty interesting keyboard. In the box you get the user manual for the keyboard, and it covers all of the settings for the backlight, all of your function key combination list, and how to switch in between the 3 modes of the keyboard. Besides that, in this bag you'll get a keycap and switch puller, surprisingly a soft tip brush, and a small Allen key for the screws on the keyboard. And there's also this pretty long Type A to Type C cable for you to charge up the battery in the keyboard or use the keyboard in wired mode. That's quite a lot of stuff, but now let's take a look at the Acrylic K61 Pro. On the top you can see the 60% compact layout of the keyboard, and on the sides you can see that it has pretty thick bezels. This is actually the frosted acrylic used here for the case. On the front you can see the GamaKay logo right here, which looks pretty nice, and you can see the 2 pieces of frosted acrylic used in the case. On the top is the same thing. You have your Type C connection port on one side, and on the other side you have a slot for the 2.4 GHz dongle. I really like it when there's a slot included for the 2.4 GHz dongle because sometimes I lose it and it's very hard to find. This is the side profile of the keyboard, and this being a frosted acrylic, you can kind of see how the keyboard is mounted inside, and on the top you can see the OEM profile pudding keycaps, and there's also a slight elevation from the bottom to the top because of this bigger nib right here. On the back of the keyboard you can really see the frosted finish here, and you can see the 4 non-slip feet, the battery inside the case, and you have all of these screws holding the case together. And on the bottom right here you have your on off switch, so if I just switch it on right here, the keyboard will turn on. And with the keyboard on, this is how it looks like with the RGB on as well. The whole thing lights up really nicely, and because of the pudding keycaps used here, you can see that it's actually really bright and saturated. And this PCB also comes with underglow RGB, so if you take a look at the sides, the front and the back, the whole thing just lights up. I think it looks pretty nice with this frosted acrylic on it. And speaking about the RGB, there are already a few RGB modes built into the keyboard, and you can toggle through them through the function key. And as mentioned before, the keycaps here are some OEM profile pudding keycaps, and they allow the RGB to shine through it really nicely. The keycaps are ABS plastic, and I believe that they are double shot, and you guys can see it kind of has a matte texture on the top. The legends here are pretty clear, and there's also some extra printing on the top to tell you what the functions of these keys are. Personally, I don't really like pudding keycaps, but this thing as a whole, it looks really nice. As for the switches, there's actually 3 options you can choose from, and they are all Gateron switches. I chose the Gateron yellow switches because I like them, and this is them in the keyboard. The switches don't come looped from the factory, as they are just the normal Gateron switches, and you can see the yellow stem in the middle, and the top housing here is actually transparent. It allows RGB to shine through it nicely. And the bottom housing is white in color, and this is a 3-pin switch with a RGB LED cutout on the top. The PCB here is 5-pin hot swap door, and I really like that, but it does have north-facing RGB LEDs. And the stabilizers here do come looped from the factory, but they are just some cheap plate mounted stabilizers, and they still rattle a lot. So it's a good thing that they loop them, but they still sound terrible in my opinion. And as for customizability, it's actually really easy to open up the keyboard. All you have to do is just remove all of the screws at the bottom, and everything should just open up easily after that. So this is the bottom half of the acrylic case, and you can see the 3000 mAh battery here and all of the cutout for the gasket mount of the keyboard on the sides. And it's basically the same thing on the top as well. And on the back of the PCB, you get this really nice pre-cut foam on the back to help with sound dampening. This is the back of the PCB, and it looks pretty good, and all of the hot swap sockets here are actually CIY hot swap sockets. And on the PCB, there's actually 2 things included. First thing you get is this pre-cut foam right here. It actually feels like polystyrene and it's really thin. I'm not really sure the use of it here. And right underneath that, you get this piece of silicone that actually just sits on the top of the PCB, and I think that this also helps with sound dampening. And this is what the plate looks like with all of the switches in. The plate is quite flexible, as you guys can see, and at the sides you can see all of the silicone gaskets right here for the gasket mount of the keyboard. I'm actually quite surprised to see that there's a lot of mods already included. Now let's move on to the typing sound test to hear how it sounds. And that is how the acrylic K61 Pro sounds like. Honestly, it sounds really dampened. Maybe it's because of everything included. You can't really hear the clickiness or the switches or the talkiness. There's just nothing at all. But I think that the main selling point of this keyboard is actually how the RGB looks like with the pudding keycaps and the acrylic case, alongside with the 2.4 GHz wireless functionality. And those two things that I just mentioned are really good on this keyboard. So if you want a wireless keyboard and you want really nice RGB, this may be the keyboard for you. So if you're interested in this keyboard, it's called the GamaKay K61 Pro. Links will be in the description below, and thank you to Banggood for sending over this unit for me to review. And that does it for this video, guys. Leave a like on this video if you like this, dislike this video if you didn't like it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I have even more content like this coming very soon, and as always, thanks for watching. Goodbye, guys.